Good evening and welcome once again to Who's Your Daddy, the only parenting lifestyle show hosted by a male of the species, me. I'm Marlon Abrahams. Thanks for joining us. Tonight my guests and I will explore something most of us who have brothers and sisters will be able to relate to. Or if you're a parent of more than one child, you'll know exactly what I'm referring to. Yes, we're discussing sibling rivalry. And it can be quite an issue in the lives of developing children. In fact, if left unchecked, it could continue well into adulthood and have a lasting effect between those siblings. We sometimes take for granted that just because we're related, we automatically should be nice and play nice with each other. But that's not always the case. Author of the book Sibling Rivalry, 7 Simple Solutions, Karen Doherty says, there's always going to be a little bit of jealousy between siblings, which is a normal part of human nature. But when that turns to envy, it brings out the absolute worst in people, she says. Sibling envy is like a festering wound. It sours our relationships to the point where we can't bear the idea of our siblings being successful or even happy, and instead we take pleasure in their failures. I certainly hope that isn't something you can relate to. Quite heavy stuff indeed. But before we get into it, just a quick reminder as usual to read my columns on parent24.com, smn.co.za, and of course in the Saturday Star newspaper up here in Gauteng. Also, thanks for your comments and discussions on my Facebook page, on Twitter and via email. Remember, all my contact details will be up on the screen after the show, so do stay in touch. Before we get into the show and before I introduce my guest, just a quick Happy Christmas to all of those watching who celebrate Christmas. And according to my guest, tonight is a hot zone for issues around sibling rivalry. Christmas time brings out the meanies in our siblings, so watch the show, maybe you'll learn a few tips. Well, my guest tonight is clinical psychologist Dr. Kalinda Linda. Welcome to the show. Good to have you with us.
Great, thank you. Good to be here.
Kalinda, where does it emanate from? Is it sort of a primal instinct to be competitive, and it doesn't become more sort of concentrated or more obvious among siblings? Tell us about where it comes from.
Yeah. I think that's the million-dollar question, but if we think about human nature, it is normal to compete, and exactly as you said, that if you're thrown together in one home or you spend a lot of time with your love object, who's mom or dad, then of course you're going to compete, because what do we all want? You know, we all want that attention and that time.
Now, the fact that, let's say you and I are related and we have a parent that we're vying for attention for, I would almost imagine that because we are related, we should go easy on ourselves or go easy with each other, because you know we know each other and we're trying to be nice. But I've heard some scary stories about sibling rivalry. I remember a couple of years ago I saw a clip on the BBC of a 3-year-old little boy trying to suffocate his 2-year-old sister. And that's why I was asking about the primal instinct. I mean, sure, obviously we all are driven to succeed. But shouldn't the fact that we are related sort of dull that edge a little bit, make us sit back and think, you know what, Kalinda's my sister, so I'm not going to be that nasty to her?
You know, I think it's that it's so concentrated. You know, you were saying something along those lines, that here you are flung together with this one object you're competing for. So I heard this one said at a talk where the person got up, he was talking about sibling rivalry, and he said, now just imagine that, you know, you've got a partner, and the partner says, oh, by the way, there's another one coming and you've got to play nice, okay? You know, and you can feel that primal feeling rising up. Or say you've got a best friend, or you know, somebody who's always your person, and now suddenly that you've got to share them with someone else. So that is very primal, that no, it's mine, and I don't want to share. So it protects you later, but not when you're little.
Yeah, so it's almost like in our nature to be possessive and jealous of the things that we like. I think what I hear you saying is that that's the norm. We are supposed to be like that, but as we get older and we mature, we realize that, you know, I can't be a drama queen all the time. But for little kids, it's the instinct, the primal instinct is it's mine, it's mine, it's mine, or daddy is mine, mommy's mine, so I want
Absolutely.
all the time. Yeah.
You know, I think we've all as parents had that experience where we're sick, you know, you really feel terrible and you're lying on the bed and you're dying, and the child's, you know, 4 or 5 years old, but you promised to take me out, you know, and they couldn't care. So one of my profs used to say that kids below 6 are psychopaths. and what he meant was that they're very egocentric, you know, that it's all about what I want and what I need, and I'll push anybody else out of the way to get that. So whether the child's an extrovert, an introvert, all of them at the end of the day want that goal, which is, you know, the attention, basking in the attention of mom or dad.
Okay, now we've heard that you said under 6 they're psychopaths.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Now, from my understanding of psychopath, I'm a little bit afraid, and I can relate to it because Madison, my middle child, is 6 years old.
Yeah.
And I often say in my columns when I refer to her is that she literally believes that she was sent down from the gods to come and torment us because the world revolves around Madison. So I can relate to that. And I certainly experienced a bit of stress trying to balance this whole sibling rivalry issue. Hannah, my eldest, is 11, and as I said, Madison's 6. And because I'm a single dad, I see them together on the weekends. And initially it was a major issue trying to balance that because Madison's very forceful, Hannah's very sensitive. So Hannah would sort of allow Madison to spend more time with me. But then Hannah realized, hold on a second, I'm not getting to spend any time with Dad. So she started rebelling. And then fights used to occur. So as a parent, I didn't know what to do. Initially, I got involved. But then that just made things worse. Then I stopped getting involved. Then I tried some other things, which we'll talk about later. But just typically, how should parents be preparing for it if they want to have more than a kid? Can they prepare for it? And what are some of the things that they should be aware of in terms of getting a good solution?
You know, you said all the important things, which is the parent first gets pulled into the power struggle because that's what it is. So when kids are little, say below 4 or 5, they can't really verbalize what they're feeling. They're just not happy. And who's this person coming in, getting in my way? So usually what happens is there's a power struggle going on, conscious or unconscious. When they get older, they start saying, I wish I were an only child sometimes. And then mom and dad are, oh, how could you say that? And we become the referee, so the game continues. So that's a classic trap we all fall into.
But,
so,
I mean, we're both parents.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the seeds of your loins. It's your pride and joy. It's so hard to see them in pain. And,
Yeah.
So what?
You know, a very good strategy is to separate the feelings from the behavior. Now, I certainly remember growing up that this was not something which was known. It was you're naughty. It wasn't you're good, but what you did was naughty because nobody knew you should do that. So a very effective tactic here is to separate the feelings from the behavior. So if the child is just having a vent, oh, I hate having a sibling, and that sort of thing. Why can't you spend more time with me? You're always with whoever. The first step is to allow the feeling, even if it's negative, because you can't get them to fake what they don't feel. Yeah. So, for example, oh, don't be silly. Of course you love your brother or sister. That's not going to fly. And then it makes them worse. Yeah. And you don't even believe it. You just want to. So step one is to allow whatever feeling comes. And you could try to empathize. Something like, I can hear that you're really feeling I'm spending way too much time with so-and-so, with the baby, with the sibling, whoever. And, yes, I hear you.
But doesn't the kid need to be of a certain age to actually be able to process that? I mean, under 6, I can see that you're feeling a bit left out because I'm spending time with the 2-year-old who's just arrived. Does that work? I mean, do they understand it? Do they comprehend it?
Funnily, they do.
Okay.
I also tested that before I had my twins are now 8. And I tested that from when they were about 2-ish. You can think with twins what goes on. So it really does seem to go in. And, if you look at marketing or when people work at the complaints counter, they're taught this, that when somebody comes at you and they're really emotional, angry, upset, the first thing you do is you empathize that, I'm so sorry, the story's let you down, I'm so sorry. So you start with that, where you allow the feeling and empathize just a bit. But it's got to be heartfelt. You can't fake it.
Kids pick up fake very quickly.
I'll come back to that later. So it's got to be heartfelt. I really hear you. And when you've done that, you wait. If the child settles, which they'll do maybe half the time, you leave it and you move on. And then later on, you can try and equalize and spend a bit more time with them, hear what they were saying. If on the other hand, they start to act out and they start to want to hurt the other one or take their things, or that they're saying really awful things to them, you've got to limit the behavior. So it's very important, allow the feeling and allow it to be expressed healthily, which we can talk about, but limit the behavior. So for example, you could say something like, I can see you really angry with your brother or sister, but we don't hurt and hit. So, you can say something like that. And if the child has heard you and they can see you mean business, sometimes they'll realize, oh, okay, not so good.
I just want to pick up on that because I had a discussion with a friend of mine in the week. I just want to digress for a second about this behavior and the person. and we got into a heated argument. It was an adult conversation about some bad person, and I actually made the distinction between, or not made the distinction, said, you can't say that a serial killer is a good person but did a bad thing. But from what you're saying now, it sounds like you can actually say that, okay, a serial killer is a bit extreme. But in the case of your kid, you're basically saying, yeah, your behavior is wrong, but remember that we love each other and we don't hurt.
You don't even have to say love each other, because they don't at that time. You can just say, you know, I can see you're really angry and you really wish you didn't have a sibling right now. Okay. And you're angry that you feel I'm with them all the time. But that doesn't mean it's okay to hit them. Yeah. So you're separating those out. That's the first thing you say. Just on the serial killer, you know, people like Gaddafi, apparently he loved his children. You know, he had these statues of them all over the place and gave them all sorts. So
you can be a serial killer and still love your children?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
Interesting stuff. No, it's a fascinating thing. The other thing that I wanted to touch on that I personally experienced, we were 4 kids, and my sister and I are 11 months apart. And then the next two, my next brother and sister, came 7 years later. And I was quite happy having a sister, no problem. But when the other two came, I resented them so much, but not consciously. I didn't understand it at the time. And for me, I grew up in the Cape Flats, so you know it wasn't easy. But they almost felt like they screwed up my life more and made it more difficult for me. Is that a normal reaction, or was I just being, you know, full of it?
Are you the elder or younger?
I'm the eldest.
Okay, sometimes when you're the second, you then become the middle child, or you were the baby and now there's this new baby that comes. I think in all families, a lot of it is to do with fit. So perhaps you and your sister maybe being opposite sex, there wasn't a direct competition. Perhaps you had your area, she had hers, and it kind of worked for you. But now there were more. So now parents were divided. They were these younger, pesky ones in your things all the time. And possibly you were told, well, you know, be okay with it, when you really weren't okay with it.
You know what, I remember distinctly, and this is maybe a bit of an overshare. My sister, the one just behind me, she was a chronic asthmatic, and she was in and out of hospital, and my parents had to go with her all the time, and I was sort of left alone. And I remember one day distinctly lying there and thinking, I wish I could get hit by a car or something and go to hospital just to get their attention. And I'm realizing, talking like this, you know, these things went through my mind and I wasn't even conscious of it, but now it's kind of making sense.
You know, because kids obviously can't think abstractly like we do. In fact, I think only becoming a parent, I understand a whole lot of things. You know, so what you're describing is actually quite real and quite natural.
All right, Kalinda, let me just interrupt you there. We've got to go to a commercial break. Don't go away, we'll be right back. Welcome back. Tonight we're talking sibling rivalry. If you've experienced it or have kids who are involved in it, hopefully tonight you'll find out how to deal with it effectively. Here are some of the signs of sibling rivalry to look out for in your children. Do your children ever argue, fight, or wind each other up? Do they get competitive, jealous, or vie for your attention? Do you feel powerless to stop their squabbling? Do you wish they could resolve disagreements on their own? Do you long for a better atmosphere at home? Some of the reasons for their behavior may include that their basic needs aren't being met. Sometimes kids fight just to get attention. Some kids apparently need companionship, but they don't know how to get it from their siblings. Power play, establishing who's the alpha child, especially between boys and girls, could be some of the reasons why they are doing what they're doing. Kalinda, having listened to that, and I got that off the internet, you know, the sort of fountain of information, all verified, of course. What I want you to tell us about is sibling rivalry. Let's say it's a bad case of sibling rivalry when they're kids. You know, you've got two sisters, for example, who compete for everything and they're competitive, and the parents don't step in and leave it to fester and to continue into their teens and adulthood. Will it change on its own? Should there be an intervention? What could happen if there is no intervention?
You know, it's highly unlikely it'll change. In fact, it'll probably just get worse, and it might go underground. They might find more subtle, nasty ways to harm each other, which on the surface look okay, but a nasty sarcasm underneath, or that sort of thing. So, you know, if there's a problem when they're little, the parents have really got 3 options. One is to manage it, which is what ideally we're bringing to them, information. And then you've got the other 2 extremes, which we tend to fall into. So the one is where we're the referee, and we micromanage everything. So those kids can't do anything when they're older without the parent. And then they just continue it. And in the other scenarios where the parents just are powerless, they don't know what to do. And that's that list you were saying, I wish things were better. So you don't want to fall into those extremes, rather handle it now.
And it's actually quite sad. I mean, I have come across siblings, adult siblings, where you pick up that undercurrent that you speak of. Brothers, for example, where Klein Boet is still peed off with Obut because of what happened back in the day, and that continues. And it's so sad when you actually see that.
Yeah, you know, they pay the price. If you think of all the don'ts that we should do, you know, that we shouldn't have favorites, or we shouldn't compare, or we shouldn't label. So, for example, why can't you do this like your brother or your sister? Or this is my maths child, and this is my, you know, reading child.
On that
Those
subject,
things stick.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. On that subject, you mentioned about favorites. I was asked a couple of weeks ago if I have a favorite child, or do I love one child more than the other. And the interesting thing about it is I actually had given it some thought. Luckily for me, my kids are completely different. I mean, Hannah and Madison are like chalk and cheese. Sophia in the Czech Republic is also a completely different child. And what I figured out on my own, and I needed to tell me if I was doing the right thing, is that I love certain things about them. Qualities that the one has that the other doesn't have. So I love them uniquely, not equally, which I don't know if that's a cop-out. It's like, okay, Hannah is sensitive and compassionate and so on. Madison is very forceful and direct and a go-getter, and I admire and love those qualities which are different. So do I love one more than the other? No, but I love different things about them. Is that the way to look at it, or?
It is. You know, there's this saying where we tend to feel we should say this, I love my children the same. And same implies a whole lot of stuff, uniformity. And that just doesn't exist, does it? You know, I defy any woman to say she loves all her pairs of shoes the same. Certainly not. And men and gadgets. So, you know, we all have our preferences. So certainly it depends on your personality, the child's personality. Let's be honest, some kids are difficult to love. They're difficult to manage. You know, we talk about that in psychology, difficult to love or easy to love. So it depends on your temperament as well. You know, is there a lot of connection, a lot of similar interests, your personalities, do you box, do you somehow not fight? We hear that often.
But then would you advise parents, if they're having, like, I know what you mean by some kids are difficult to love, would you then advise parents to actually find the little gems in their personalities?
Yes.
And obviously nurture those gems and praise them for that.
Yeah. You know, I think it starts with you as the parent to acknowledge, sure, I really struggle with kid one, but there's a very easy relationship with kid two. Don't tell the child, or anyone who will tell the child, but tell an adult who you think you can trust. That's number one. And then you can start the problem solving, which is right. We box over here. Who can I bring in to actually assist? Because, you know, sometimes when one of you's had it with the child, bring in an aunt, an uncle, anybody, you know, somebody else, a co-parent, sometimes even your domestic help, because they've got an easier way of getting certain things across. So acknowledge to yourself, and then secretly you can go and do exactly what you said, you know, without comparing it overtly in front of them. So when they're alone with you, obviously each child can have their thing, you know, this is your maths is your thing. We try and steer away from it, but it's going to happen. So you could talk about special qualities, special talents, but never direct comparison.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking now, Madison is naturally athletic, which I think she got from her mom, because her mom's got a bit of a history in that. And she's got good balance, she runs fast, she's been asked to do, at 6 years old, to do a gymnastics tryout. Hannah has no interest in anything physical, but she's a rocket scientist up here. She can sit and do her art and write and whatever. And it's easy, it makes it easy for me to acknowledge those different things, because I notice in the beginning it was sort of an issue because, oh, you're praising her for that. Now it's like, I don't care, because I'm good at this and she can be good at running. It's not an issue. So I think the kids will also start picking that up, that you are differentiating and you are seeing their strengths.
It's a very fine line, that one, and you hearing it, yes, because you're living it, that you want to bring out their strengths and allow them to have a thing, because all kids will naturally do that anyway, without ever directly comparing. So, for example, if the one who's sporty and the other one is not, you would separately enjoy and celebrate those talents, which is what I'm hearing, where the wrong thing to do would be to say, why can't you be more like her at the sports days? Or, oh, you're not active, you know, you need to get more active. And then vice versa, you know, why can't you sit and amuse yourself? That sort of thing. So as long as there's no direct comparison, which is easy to say sitting here, But of course, when you're at home and you're tired and you're stressed, you can fall into that.
I've always just, as a person, hated those kind of comparisons. Why can't you be more like that? And I think I'm fortunate being the eldest. I was never told that. I always used to feel a bit bad when my mom used to sometimes do that with my sisters. And that's not a cool way to parent. I certainly agree with you on that one. What I want to touch on, because I'm sure there are a lot of parents out there, well, not parents really, siblings out there, adult siblings watching the show, and the things we're talking about are sort of ringing bells or setting off, I remember now, and I remember this is why I hate that cow, or, you know, obut or whatever. Is it too late once you're an adult, or can it still be fixed if you have a damaged relationship with your siblings?
You know, it can be fixed any time, and I say this because I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist, so I don't believe in lying on the couch and delving into the past and really putting energy in there. That if you start behaving differently now, choosing to interpret things differently, for example, whose fault was it really? There were lots of kids. Like what the example you gave, your sister was sick, so whose fault was that? You know, or if our parents who were parented pretty badly themselves,
tell me about
you know, it was the post-war generation. Our parents didn't know how to separate the behavior and the feeling, all the stuff we're talking about now. We're only just learning. So if you can decide mistakes were made, all right, we accept. So from here on out, where are the natural points of connection with that sibling? There must be at least one somewhere. And let's actually start there. Rather have a little bond, but it's clean and it's real. And then maybe that's all it is, and maybe then you do continue. But it can be fixed.
Yeah. Oh, you know, just for the whole concept of, and it being the eve of Christmas, I know this is when families get together and you have to put up with, you know, siblings or even extended family members that you can't stand. And I think, Linda, what you've said now might stand some of you in good stead tonight, is find that one little nugget in their personality and focus on that. And the good thing, what you've just said now is, whose fault was it back in the day? You know, I mean, relating to my experience, I feel like an idiot now, because I realize it wasn't anybody's fault. It was just the way it was. And there was no reason to hold on to that anger.
But notice that the feelings were real, you know, and for all of us, you know, those feelings are real for you when you're feeling it. And you've got to almost keep in mind the negative and positive feelings. So, you know, anger happens. Rejoicing for others when they get good news happens. But this goes back to Cain and Abel and, you know, back there.
Not my brother's keeper.
So it's always been there. So we've rather got to manage it. And I really want to underline that feelings are just a part of us. So separate them from the behaviors, and then find healthy ways to let those feelings out, the less flattering ones, and then there's space for the others to actually come out.
All right, well, you've heard it. Separate the two, and if you have difficulty doing that, you need to speak to someone like Linda. I'm sure she'll be able to help you. Well, it looks like time flies when you're having fun, and that's all we have time for tonight. Remember to contact me if you'd like to get in touch with my guests, or if you need more information on the subject. Until then, happy Christmas and happy parenting until next time. Good night.